I went to my own brother's wedding alone, already feeling a little out of place. But when I found my seat at the reception table, I froze. Sitting right there in front of the plate was a little white name card, neatly printed in fancy cursive. Except it didn't have my name on it. It said charity case. At first, I honestly thought it had to be a joke, maybe some kind of mistake. But when I looked around the table and saw a few people trying not to laugh and others pretending not to notice, I felt my face burn with humiliation. My brother was across the room smiling for photos, with his new wife while I stood there, holding this stupid card that labeled me like I was some kind of burden. So I did the only thing I could think of in that moment. I walked out. But what happened after I left that wedding ended up exposing something my family had been hiding for years. And now the entire family is split down the middle because of it. So tell me honestly, was I wrong for what I did? For some background, my brother Daniel and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child. Straight A's, captain of the soccer team, the one teachers loved and relatives bragged about at family gatherings. I wasn't the troublemaker exactly, but I was always the disappointment. I struggled in school, I changed jobs a lot in my 20s, and I went through a rough patch financially after my startup failed. Meanwhile, Daniel landed a corporate job straight out of college, bought a house by the time he was 27, and basically lived the life our parents always imagined for one of their kids. I won't lie and say I wasn't jealous sometimes, but the thing is, I never hated him. I actually tried really hard to maintain a relationship with him. I went to his graduation, helped him move into his first house, even helped him renovate his kitchen one summer. But over the years, I started noticing little comments he'd make that felt condescending. Stuff like, "You'll figure life out eventually," or "not everyone is built for stability." He always said it with a smile, like he thought he was being supportive, but it never sat right with me. Then about a year ago, he got engaged to this woman named Melissa. At first, she seemed nice enough, very polished, very organized, the type of person who had spreadsheets for everything. But the more time I spent around her, the more I realized she had a weird attitude toward me. She would ask questions about my work, in this tone that felt more like an interrogation than curiosity. "So you're freelancing now? Does that actually pay the bills?" Stuff like that. I brushed it off because weddings are stressful and maybe she was just trying to understand the family dynamics. When Daniel asked me to come to the wedding, he didn't make me a groomsman, which I'll admit stung a little. Instead, he said they wanted to keep the wedding party small and intimate. I told him that was fine. I didn't want to cause drama, and honestly, I was just happy he invited me at all. I bought a decent suit, booked a hotel near the venue, and even picked out a pretty expensive gift for them. Despite everything, he was still my brother. The wedding itself was at this fancy countryside venue about 2 hours away. White chairs, string lights everywhere. The kind of place people take Instagram photos of. The ceremony was actually beautiful. Daniel looked happy. Melissa looked like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. And for a moment, I forgot all the awkwardness. I clapped when they kissed like everyone else. Then the reception started. People began finding their assigned seats, and I walked over to the table number listed on the board. I was already feeling a little awkward because most of the guests, there were Melissa's friends or Daniel's co-workers. I didn't recognize anyone at my table. Still, I figured it would be fine. Weddings are social events, right? Then I saw the card. Like I said before, it didn't say my name. It said charity case. I remember standing there staring at it for several seconds, thinking maybe I grabbed the wrong table. I checked the board again. No, that was my table. I looked at the other name cards. Everyone else had their actual names. Mine was the only one with some kind of label. A woman sitting nearby gave this uncomfortable little laugh and said, "Oh, wow." Another guy muttered, "That's messed up." That's when it hit me that this wasn't a printing mistake. Someone had done this intentionally. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I could feel people looking at me, waiting to see how I'd react. I glanced across the reception hall and saw Melissa talking to some guests while Daniel stood beside her with a drink, both of them looking perfectly happy. And suddenly everything clicked. All those little comments over the years, the way Melissa asked about my finances, the fact that Daniel had once joked during a family dinner that I was the family's long-term investment project. At the time, everyone laughed. I laughed too. Now I realized they probably weren't joking. I picked up the card and turned it over in my hands, hoping maybe there was something on the back explaining it. There wasn't. Just those 2 words. Charity case. I thought about walking up to Daniel, right then and there, and asking him what the hell this was supposed to mean. but I looked around the room again and saw people whispering. I imagined confronting him in the middle of his wedding reception and instantly becoming the villain of the night. So instead I set the card back down, and I left. I didn't storm out dramatically or anything. I just quietly walked past the dance floor, through the hallway, and out to the parking lot. The cool night air hit my face and I realized my hands were shaking. Halfway to my car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin Mark. "Dude, are you leaving?" I replied, "Yeah." A few seconds later, he sent back, "Good. That was messed up." I sat in my car for a few minutes trying to calm down. Part of me wanted to drive straight home and forget the whole thing ever happened. But another part of me kept thinking about that card, about how someone had printed it, placed it there, and expected me to just sit down and accept it like some kind of joke. And that's when my phone rang. It was my mom. I almost didn't answer, but I did. The second I picked up, she said, "Why did you leave the reception?" So clearly word had already spread. I asked her one simple question. "Did you see the name card they gave me?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then she said quietly, "Yes." And that pause told me everything I needed to know. So that's the situation I was in. Standing outside my brother's wedding venue, realizing my own family had apparently watched this happen and said nothing. And before I tell you what happened next, I honestly want to know what you would have done in my position. Would you have stayed and pretended it was funny? Would you have confronted them in front of everyone? Or would you have walked away like I did? Because what I chose to do after that phone call ended up blowing the entire wedding apart. After I hung up with my mom, I just sat there in the car staring at the steering wheel. My head was spinning. I kept replaying the moment I saw that card over and over again. The whispers, the awkward looks, the realization that this wasn't an accident. Then another message came in. This time it was from Daniel. "Where did you go?" No apology, no explanation. Just that. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I saw the name card. A few minutes passed before he responded. "Relax, it was just a joke." A joke. That one word made my blood boil. Because here's the thing about jokes. They're supposed to be funny to everyone involved. But there I was sitting alone, in a dark parking lot while my brother celebrated inside with hundreds of guests, who had just watched me get humiliated. So I typed back 3 words. "Explain the joke." Another long pause. Then he sent, "Melissa thought it would be funny, you know, because Mom and Dad helped you out a lot over the years." That was it. No apology. No concern about how I felt. Just confirmation that my struggles had basically become entertainment for them. Something inside me snapped. I realized that if I just drove home quietly, the story everyone would remember was that I couldn't take a joke, that I was overly sensitive, that I caused drama at a wedding. And for the first time in my life, I decided I wasn't going to let that happen. So instead of leaving, I grabbed the name card from the passenger seat, got out of the car, and walked back into the venue. What happened next is something no one at that wedding will ever forget. I walked straight into the reception hall while the DJ was announcing the couple's first dance. Everyone was focused on Daniel and Melissa in the middle of the floor, slow, dancing under the lights. Perfect timing. I walked up to the DJ booth and quietly asked for the microphone. He hesitated at first, but I guess I looked serious enough that he handed it over. The music faded out. People started looking around confused, and then I spoke. I held up the card and said, "Hi everyone. Sorry to interrupt the celebration, but I just wanted to thank my brother and his new wife for the lovely seat they prepared for me tonight." You could hear a pin drop. Then I read the card out loud. "Charity case." The room erupted into whispers. Daniel's face turned pale. Melissa looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. I didn't yell. I didn't insult anyone. I just calmly explained what had happened. I told the room that I had come to the wedding to support my brother, and that apparently my role in the family was now a punchline. Then I placed the card on the sweetheart table in front of them. And I left again, this time for good. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, my phone was exploding with messages from relatives. Some of them were furious that I ruined the wedding. Others were apologizing and saying they had no idea about the card. Apparently, the reception turned into complete chaos after I left. Guests started arguing. Melissa blamed the wedding planner. The wedding planner blamed Melissa, and Daniel spent half the night trying to convince people it was just a misunderstanding. But the truth had already spread. And for once in my life, people actually saw how my brother treated me. A few days later, my mom called again. She told me Daniel and Melissa were furious, saying I embarrassed them in front of everyone. I asked her one question. Were they embarrassed when they printed that card? She didn't have an answer. Now the family is divided. Some say I should have ignored it and kept the peace. Others say Daniel and Melissa got exactly what they deserved. As for me, I don't regret standing up for myself. Not even a little. So that's my story. If you think I was right to call them out, go ahead and like this video. And if you want to hear more crazy family stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'd also really like to know your thoughts, so tell me down in the comments. Was I justified or did I take things too far? Either way, thanks for listening to my story, and I'll see you all in the next one.